Thank you all for being here. It's me, Ari Dotset, but you can just call me Rashid, that's fine. First question. Can you all hear me clearly? Let me know that right now so I know if I need to adjust the audio settings. I'm using my headset right now because it's closest to my head, so you can hear my voice quite clearly. But in case there's something wrong with the headset, let me know right now. Just answer the question. Can you hear me clearly? Let me know. And by the way, if you're driving, please focus on the road, please. You can leave comments, but I prefer you to focus on the road first. Thank you very much. All right. So, okay, you can all hear me clearly. Okay, that's good. All right, let me start right into it. In this live stream, I want to explain a practice from ancient Egypt that worldwide the masses hold on to. And it's not common prostitution. I'm not talking about that. I'll go into it a little bit more into the history and the effects of it. But first thing first, I want to warn you, this live stream is not for everyone. If you are suitable to deal with sensitive topics like human sexuality, especially the sexual violence and awkwardness of the human species, stop watching this live stream right now. All right? And on this channel, I deal with real things. And our species, the human species, we've been quite sexually violent throughout most of our history. So that's something we have to come to terms with. We can't change the past, but we can improve in the now. All right? So, when you read in the Bible about Sodom and Gomorrah and how the men of Sodom came after the two guests at Lot's house, wanted to rape them, what that's all about? But then you also read about Abraham, how Abraham was afraid to go with Sarah into Egypt because Abraham was afraid that people will see how beautiful Sarah was, kill him, and take Sarah away. Now, this all relates to what happened between Noah and his son Ham, which we call Ham in English. Well, the Bible says Ham knew his father's nakedness. Okay, I'm not going to be too graphic about it now, but let's just say Ham, or say Ham, he was sex obsessed. His father was getting drunk one day, naked, running around, doing all type of stuff, saw his father lying there, and somehow his sex obsession took him over. Whatever happened. He talked about it. His two brothers, Japheth and Shem, came, covered their death, tried to cover up the issue. Noah found out. Ham had to leave. Ham went all the way to what they call Ethiopia, because that's where the Garden of Eden was located. Ham arrived there with his family, but there was no Garden of Eden anymore. It's been washed away by the flood. Ham was so pissed off because there was no Garden of Eden anymore, because he hoped to be able to get the skins that God made, that God took from an animal's skin for Adam and Eve, but they weren't there. Ham was not only sex obsessed, not only violated his own dad because he couldn't control himself, no excuse by the way, he also was into the mysteries of fallen angels. So Ham and his children, they populated what they call East Africa and the Nile region. And one of his sons, Mizraim, he located himself in the middle of the Nile River. Not right, the Nile River, my bad. In the middle of the Nile River is where he located himself. It was a fertile area, and Mizraim had a lot of babies. It was a good thing to have a lot of babies, being healthy, sexually active. Mizraim is also where we got eventually the name for Egypt from the ancient Hebrews. Now, Egypt comes from Aegyptos, which is Greek. Before Aegyptos, they called it Mizraim. Okay? And the people from Mizraim called themselves Kemet, or Kemet, which means black, dark, named of the color of the people there. The Mizraim people, or so the ancient Egyptians, or Black Egypt, because Egypt had been transformations. You had the Black Egypt, then you had Egypt under the Medo-Persian rule, which still Black Egypt, but there was resistance. Then you had Ptolemaic Egypt, just Egypt under the Greek Empire. That's where you got the white pharaohs from, the white elites in Egypt. The public became whitewashed also. Then you had, that turned into Roman Egypt. And after Roman Egypt, you had Islamic Egypt, which became Arab Egypt, and that's where Egypt is today. So the Egyptians are living in Egypt today. Most of them have no ancestor to the original people that lived there. Most of the original people moved downwards towards what they call Sudan. And by the way, ancient Egypt contained what we call Sudan also for big parts. So just so you know, Mizraim, go back to Black Egypt. Kemet, as the population called themselves, they adopted the sex obsession of their ancestor Ham, who was still alive. Okay, and by the way, Nimrod is a grandson of Ham, who established Babylon. So the Hamites were the most populated group on the earth, and they were quite wicked too. Okay, straight up. I don't care that Ham is ancestor of Africans and most of the Asians today. I don't care he's one of my main ancestors. He was bad news. Simple as that. All right? And by the way, not even the African cultures, even the African or Asian culture want to mention that much. I only found a reference to Ham in Korean mythology. The other nations don't even want to talk about their ancestors because it's even for those over-sexualized pagan nations back then, Ham was a bit too much. What he did to Noah, how far he went, but anyway. Anyway, you have to be from mainstream ancient Egypt. They had this thing called holy prostitution. Now, there are other terms for it. It comes down to this. To the ancient Egyptians, as well as the ancient Babylonians, were all Hamites, prostitution, now this is only for Egypt. In Babylon and other places on the earth, prostitution was restricted. And if, as a woman, you were shunned if you were a prostitute. Prostitution was something tolerated but not celebrated. Ancient Egypt was different. In ancient Egypt, prostitution amongst women for women was a noble divine cause. I repeat that. Prostitution, female prostitutes, it was a noble divine cause. So women who were prostitutes, they got financial and social rewards. Not everyone that was a prostitute got paid in money. A lot of them just got social rewards. They were praised, were invited to parties, they were made the maid of honor, or they were allowed to have local influence here and there. So one way as a woman to come up in ancient Egypt was just to hoe around. Simple as that. Because if you were a hoe, you were considered a goddess. Yep, it may sound stupid, but that's how it was. Now, not every woman could hoe around. If you were married and you hoed around, oh my goodness, you were in trouble because marriage was a serious thing in ancient Egypt. They expected young people to get married early on, have a lot of babies, and populate the land of Egypt. That's what they expected. Nevertheless, ancient Egypt had this sex obsession. There was even such a thing as divine masturbation, in which you were masturbating in a divine way. I don't want to go into that right now because it even sounds quite disturbing. But anyway, amongst the women in ancient Egypt, and by the way, even though ancient Egypt, Kemet was dark, African dark, if you were a light-skinned Shemite or you were actually a white person from Europe, because there weren't that many white people around at the time. There weren't that many white folks around anyway. But if you were white, you were in Egypt, they didn't think about race or skin color and none of that. So women in general, because there were many women from other ethnicities, women from Asia, women from ancient Europe, or women from further that came to Egypt to do this goddess thing. If you were sexually loose as a woman, you'd be dropped into ancient Egypt. They would even send you to ancient Egypt because somebody wanted you around in your home country. But anyway, in ancient Egypt, you had this division, this psychological division amongst the women. It's a duality that was established. You had the goddesses, you had the domestic women. Now, I call it domestic women for the following reason. Domestic women were women in which you put long-term investment as a man. whether it's one of your relatives, maybe one of your siblings, or your wife, or some woman from your community that you're dear of. Those were the women you look after like family. They're part of your people. And if a woman was a foreigner that came and lived in Egypt, you treated her just like she was an Egyptian. Okay, they were inclusive in that area, in that way, as long as you serve the Egyptian gods, of course. But then you also had the goddesses. The goddesses, quote unquote, were women for public entertainment and public ease. Now, why did you have this duality? Because worldwide in ancient times they understood when women are not sexually durable, that's going to become a problem to the community in general. Because when women cannot sexually bond well with their husbands, you're going to get trouble in the households. So yes, some women, there were sexually loose women around, of course, but they were shunned, or they were put in temples and were made temple prostitutes. Ancient Egypt was kind of unique in the sense that prostitution was embraced. But one thing, once you became this loose woman, you had to stay for it your whole life because you couldn't just go back to being a domestic woman. Absolutely not. So those goddesses, quote unquote, in ancient Egypt, you had black women, colored women, or they were brown skinned. You had there were likely maybe some white women around also. There were Asian women also. Women from all over the world that became part of this goddess thing in ancient Egypt. They would put tattoos on their bodies. They would ink themselves with tattoos just to be recognized as a goddess. And they would put on a red lipstick. Because red lips are a signifier to your brain. Let me say, when a man sees a red lipstick, the brain interprets this as the woman is sexually ready. So that's the trick behind red lipstick. You trick the brains of men to perceive you're sexually ready. Okay? And red lipstick by itself kind of puts you out there in people's face. So red lipstick and tattoos were the markers of the goddesses in ancient Egypt. Now, in this culture, it went like this. The domestic women, or the women in general, they were not supposed to be sexually chaste, like you see in the culture today, but they were supposed to be beneficial to the community, having babies. It was okay to have sex around as a woman as long as you did it with stable men and contributed. The goddesses were there so that the other women who were considered the domestic women would feel good about themselves. So that the goddesses were there as narcissistic supply. Let me write this down for you. They were there as narcissistic supply for women, for the other women. It went like this. If you were a woman that was durable sexually, and that your husband, that your children, you would see some of those goddesses going around. Men would run through them sexually. They have high body counts, maybe in the hundreds of thousands. Is okay. Having a woman with a body count of 1,000, 2,000, if you've been in this holy prostitution for decades, that's possible. It would horrify the other women in the community, and women would think, hey, at least we're not as worse off as those women over there. They're horrible, they're emotionally unstable, whatever. But they're the goddesses, so they light on fireworks outside. But anyway, so here's how it went. So the goddesses were meant as narcissistic supply to the biggest part of the female population. And then you also had another role for the goddesses, which was that when men had issues in life, instead of fighting out their wives and their children, whatever, the home would remain safe, and they would go to some of those goddesses and gangbang them and whatever, unload their stress on them sexually, and then go back home being fine. Now, prostitution everywhere served a similar purpose, but in ancient Egypt, it wasn't looked down upon if you went to one of those goddesses just to release your stress, whatever. It was kind of, I would say, not promoted, but kind of embraced. So that was ancient Egypt. And sometimes, if you as a family wanted to get a higher status in Egyptian society, you would whore out one of your daughters. Let's say you have a daughter. She's just 5 years old, but you're from a you're just from a farming background, but you want to become one of the traders in the city. You could make a deal with a temple priest and hand over your 5-year-old daughter, and it would train her to be a goddess figure. She would become a holy prostitute to the community. And then you, as a father, would get revenue because your daughter was out there being whored around by the community. Such things happened. It was a common practice in ancient Egypt, whoring out your daughters. Now, it wasn't just about the money, it was about just the social status, because if your daughter was one of the goddesses, people tend to look good at you also. Now, this Hamite thing was an abomination. It was and is an abomination to the Heavenly Father. Now, when the Israelites were delivered out of Egypt, Moses instructed them, guided by the Heavenly Father, not to do the same practices as in Egypt. So the Israelites had to unlearn this practice of whoring out their own daughters. Okay? In the book of Leviticus, my goodness, I forgot where it's written. But anyway, in the book of Leviticus, you can read about this. They were not allowed to whore out their daughters, nor to let their sons be sexually exploited either. And by the way, this loose booty thing was meant like this. If you were a man and you were not strong and muscular enough in the eyes of the Egyptian society, a big chance the public would look down on you, and the other men in the community would be upset with you for not being manly enough, and they would gang rape you. And once they gang rape you, from that point on, anyone, theoretically speaking, can just jump on you and answer you anytime they want. So you became the loose booty. Your anus became all the men afloat inside. And in ancient Egypt, if you were the one offloading into a man's anus as a man, you were kind of looked as okay. But if you were the one it was done upon, it was horrible. Because that was a loose booty ritual. You had it in Sodom too. Remember, Sodom was an Egyptian colony. Okay? They got these practices from their ancestor Ham. Now, before I continue, is this Egyptian attitude, this Kemetic attitude, clear to you? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 29. All right. So is this all clear unto you? Okay, it is clear. Thank God it is clear. Now, I want you to think for a moment. Becoming one of these goddess figures, yes, you got all those rewards in the community, but in fact, over time, you would decline as a woman. Why? Because eventually you would realize all these men, because those goddesses were not always fully grown women. Let's be frank. Let's be realistic over here. So let's imagine you're 12, 13. You just had your first period and all that. And suddenly your father or your uncle, someone in your family decides to hand you over to the temple priest. And now they put makeup on you, all those cute dresses, jewelry, and all of that. And before you know it, you have all these grown men, sometimes older men, elderly men, all being so obsessed with you, walking after you, stalking you. And then from time to time, you had something like 5, 10, 15, 20 of them standing in line just to bounce into you one by one. Let this happen over and over again. At some point, it's going to break you down mentally. And let's not even talk about what happens with your vagina if you have all these men roughly pounding into you without any sensitivity towards you, because you just want to offload the stress in you. So this goddess thing, don't think that old women kind of thought, hey, this is a good idea. There were a lot of them were horrified by it. And even amongst the nations in ancient times, other nations even thought that ancient Egyptians went a bit too far with this. So over time, especially of the Exodus under Moses, the goddess thing began to decline little by little. So now they couldn't just promote this goddess thing out of the blue and get little girls or young women to become the sex victims for the community. So now they had to use black magic spells on some women or little girls to trick them into this goddess practice. And that is what we talk about today. This black magic spell to trick a young girl, because often done on females between ages 12 and 22, 23, sometimes 24, but let's say age 12 till 23. Between 12 and let's say 19, it's easiest to do it on a female. This black magic spell is one of the easiest spells you can do. It's quite easy to do. You don't even need that much practice for it. It's done by men, by the way. And there are two ways to do it. Either with the aid of an evil spirit directly, or you use your intense male gaze in a psychic way when you approach a woman. I'm not going to go in details and describe how to do this spell, because for ethical reasons I won't do it, because I don't advise nor recommend anyone to do these practices. But this spell is a part of what we call juju. Juju is a lower form of spell binding. Voodoo is the highest spell binding there is. Juju is a rank lower, because juju is mainly centered around sexual aggression. So let me write this down. You have voodoo, you have juju. Voodoo. Okay, let me turn this over here. My bad. Let me see if you can see it better now. Juju says about sexual aggression or sexual intensity. And voodoo is more about psychological dominance. And there's also a lot of sex trauma involved in this also. So both voodoo and juju are sexual, but voodoo is the strongest spell binding, and juju is more for the everyday men, if you can say. Now, this spell to trick a young girl or a woman into this goddess misfortune, because this misfortune is a goddess thing. There are various names for the spell throughout cultures. In China, they call it one way. In Kenya, call it another way. In Brazil, call it another way. In this live stream, I'll call it the Lolita spell, because there are people out there calling the Lolita spell anyway, and the term Lolita is also used to describe a spell. Okay, so it's the Lolita spell. Now, what is a Lolita? A Lolita is a young woman, often a teenager, that's sexually loose in the community. That's a Lolita. So the term Lolita is also used by warlocks to refer to a woman that's been put under this goddess misfortune. All right. Now, if there's also a fashion genre called Lolita, I'm not talking about the fashion brand. If you like the fashion style Lolita because it's cute, that's fine. I'm not talking about that. If your first name is Lolita as a woman, I'm not saying anything wrong with you having that name. Okay. If you know the name brings up bad associations. The term Lolita is actually refers to a woman who's under this goddess misfortune. That's really what actually comes down to. It's also used just to refer to any sexually loose teenage girl or young woman, but in paganism, Lolita means a woman who's on this goddess misfortune. All right? Now, understand the following. It's juju. It's not voodoo. The thing with voodoo is a cycle that you establish. In juju, you need to do frequent repetition. Okay? And that's why voodoo is the strongest. In juju, you have to do frequent. Did I write this wrong? Oh no, hold on. My bad. You have to do frequent repetitions. Okay? So this Lolita spell, when you put this on a woman with your male gaze, again, I won't go into details how to do it because I don't want any man even think about doing this crap. When you do this on a woman, the first time you do it already has an imprint on her brain. It has a semi-traumatic imprint on the female mind. It also affects the female brain, but the brain is not where you are. The mind's in the soul, is in the chest. But anyway, the Lolita spell has a semi-traumatic imprint on the female mind. That's what you cause onto a female. And because there's a semi-traumatic, they don't say semi-traumatic, it's because, or I can better say quasi-traumatic, maybe that's a better term. Quasi, almost traumatic. Why? Because this shocking male gaze you come approach her with causes her to kind of freeze on a psychological level. And this freezing effect, let me write this down. There's a freezing effect on the woman or the young girl. And this freezing effect slows down her discernment. Slow discernment. And because she has slow discernment for a couple of days, in those days, you now can suggest this sexual loses onto her repeatedly. And before you know it, she is hypnotized by you. And she begins to act out what you suggested onto her. This is how the Lolita spell works. You use your intense male gaze, where you do it by yourself after training, or you do it with help of an evil spirit. You approach the woman. There is this quasi-traumatic imprint on her mind. This causes a freezing effect psychologically, which lasts for a few days. That's why she has slow on discernment. And during these maybe 2, 3, or 4 days, you make sure you suggest sexual looseness. You don't tell her, go and hoe around right now. You don't say it like that. But you actually suggest onto her that it's time for her to lose herself a little bit, or to date around a little bit more, or you can suggest this sexual looseness onto her. And 9 out of 10 times, it works. Warlocks who do this Lolita spell, they're being trained to do it. They also can pick out which woman is more likely to fall for it and which one is not. If a woman has been, or if a girl has been neglected by her family, especially by her biological father, it works the easiest on them. All right? Oh, and by the way, if you're a woman watching this and you have tattoos, or you wear red lipstick, I'm not saying that automatically you're a prostitute and you are a goddess figure. No. You may have taken tattoos because you thought they were cute or fancy, or you may wear red lipstick because you're just used to. I don't here to judge you or condemn you. I'm just telling you that the use of tattoos on women and red lipstick, that combination, ancient Egypt, this goddess thing. All right? So, I'll consider do reaction on movies too. but maybe on in another way. But what I'm going to say is that, look, this spell over here, again, is, I would say, it's the easiest spell you can do as a man. If you're a man and you're into black magic, or you're into become a warlock, or do occult things, it's the easiest spell you can do. But here's the thing: not everyone is as receptible to it. Okay, her background matters too. In general, in the world now, warlocks from all walks, from all ethnicities, whether they're European warlocks, African warlocks, Asian warlocks, Arab warlocks, Native American, Hispanic warlocks, warlocks all over the world, they come to the West and they practice juju on European women. Yes, European, or I can say white women, are the easiest to do this juju upon, because culturally speaking, they are the most sexually illiterate of all women on the earth. Ooh! I may hurt people's feelings by saying this. I'm saying the truth. European females, look at the bigger picture, they're the most sexually illiterate females on the earth. 95% of them don't even understand the link between spirituality and sexuality. They don't. So that's why you see a lot of those warlocks. They're European warlocks doing it also, but you have a lot of warlocks from college backgrounds coming to the West. Some of them pretend to be refugees. Some just so-called come to study. Some just come to say, I want a better life or whatever. Or they go to dating sites to date European females. And once they come to the West, you see them actually doing this juju. They're practicing the juju on a lot of women. Many warlocks, they begin with this juju on females. And then they build up and do other practices as warlocks. So just going to high school, knowing that a man is put on a condom, knowing to take the pill, not to get pregnant, sorry, that's not sex education. Sex education is knowing what human sexuality is an energetic thing with a physical expression. It's about community building, community maintenance, and knowing the weaknesses and strengths of human sexuality. All of that is sex education. And when it comes to Western people, Europeans, they don't get that much sex education to begin with. Some never had real sex education, only learned how to put on a condom and how to prevent getting pregnant, prevent a woman from getting pregnant. Western, I'm saying European females are the most sexually illiterate women on the earth. Now that can change, but I don't see it changing that quickly. I'm just saying that's it is. That's why warlocks worldwide love to practice juju on European females. So if you're a European female watching this, I'm not insulting you, I'm telling you the facts of what goes on out there. And this is old news. I mean, even when I was 16, 17, you would hear some of those teenage warlocks walking around, and they would always talk on trying it out on some white girl. And if one of those warlocks managed to do it on a white girl, all the rest would say, whoa, dude, you did it. How did it go? I mean, and I grew up in the Netherlands. I grew up in Rotterdam, and this often happens in Rotterdam. It happens a lot. In the Netherlands, juju done on Western women is the main thing. There are European men joining and doing it also. So, just want to point that out. This Lolita spell, which is a type of juju, again, it needs frequent repetition. That's why you need to pamper the female you put a spell on as much as possible. As much as possible. And listen, sex traffickers use this Lolita spell. They do. This is what a lot of sex traffickers are using. I mean, if you have any sex trafficker out there who managed to trick a lot of women into sex trafficking, or you find any pimp or any lover boy who ends up domestically abusing multiple women at the time, how do they do it? This is what they're using, juju. And that's why such men, they pamper you. They love bump you with gifts, with expensive dates, or with all those, or with whatever way they can pamper you. Why? Because juju needs frequent repetition. Okay? Voodoo is just a cycle you introduce. Juju, you need to keep insisting on it. Now, this Lolita spell, the reason it's so disturbing is because it comes down to this. You have a lot of grown men in the community that don't want to deal with anything in life. They just want to escape all the time. And they have all this pent up aggression and anger inside of them. So they want an outlet. And the community does want men to start fighting one another because they want the men to be around to keep the community going. So what do you do with the pollution of the men that don't want to face anything? You need those men around. Some of them are doctors, lawyers, police officers, judges. Some of them are carpenters, are plumbers. So you can't just erase all those men. You need them around. But they have pollution they don't want to face. You don't want them to come with that anger, frustration to their wives or girlfriends or their children. So communities would long for damaged goods. The communities would often long for women who are damaged so that both everyone can look down on them as narcissistic supply, and they also want damaged women so that all the pent up frustration of the men can be dumped into the vaginas of those women. That's what communities often begin to long for. So this is an ancient Egyptian establishment. This is something from ancient Egypt that societies worldwide keep reproducing. They don't do it in the open like ancient Egypt did, because even in ancient times it was too much in ancient Egypt. All right? Now, this is how it often goes these days in the West. I'm talking about the Western world now. This is how it goes in the West, like for some in the Netherlands, United States, Britain, France, Spain, not that much, because women in Spain are a bit more literate sexually. Unfortunately, it also happens in Russia and Ukraine and Poland a lot, a lot. So, yes, if you're a Polish woman, listen to this. It's done in Poland a lot too, because there are Polish warlocks bragging out there that they're doing this Lolita spell on their own Polish women, and they're laughing about their own Polish women, how stupid they are. Yes, you have Polish warlocks doing that. You have Russia and Ukrainian warlocks doing the same with their own women too. And now this war between Russia and Ukraine going on, a lot of this crap is happening too. All right? But a lot of people don't want to talk about it. This is how it often goes in the West. Yes, Czech Republic too. When I was in Prague, there was a while ago that I was in Prague. When I walked to Prague, I could clearly see a lot of women there were affected by juju. But who was I to talk? I couldn't even speak the Czech language, so I just let it go. But anyway, this is how it often goes. You have a 14, 15-year-old girl in high school. Her body is getting in shape. And in the community, you have all this frustration going on. So some of the warlocks, they now get assignment from the wizards. Listen, there's a lot of frustration in the community. We need to have a Lolita around right now. So the warlocks will go to the high schools, talk to some of the boys in high school, to talk to them saying, which girls you guys all like? They might go to high school. So you mean some guy passing by in a nice car or a nice bike or scooter, whatever. And then the other guys think, whoa, who's this guy? So this warlock would befriend the teenagers at the school. They won't enter the school because the police may inflict them, but they would go to the high school and befriend the guys over there. Once they befriend the guys over there, they would ask which girls you all like. And of course, the guys in high school say, hey, I like, let's say, Justine over there. If the warlock keeps hearing about Justine, then he knows, Justine is likely quite good looking. Then the warlock wants to see who's this girl called Justine. Oh, it's 14 or 15-year-old over there. The warlock reports this to his, his handler, and the handler, who's often a wizard, will tell him, okay, listen, you know what's in the book. You with 5 men go there, do this Lolita spell onto her. If it works after 5 days, then you do this and this. So this Justine, one day, we have some guys catcalling her. She gets upset. Then this other guy comes to, hey, leave this girl alone. And because the guy who rescues her from those guys catcalling her, she feels kind of bonded to the guy who rescued her. She begins to trust the guy. What she's not aware of is that this guy who rescued her is on the same thing as the guys who are catcalling her. Because the guys catcalling her are warlocks, they're friends of one another. But according to her, those just strangers are bothering her, and this other guy was the good guy, the white knight, came and rescued her by standing up for her. So the guy stands up for her, and little by little, the guy that stands up for her begins to suggest this sexual openness towards her. And she's not aware she's under this quasi traumatic imprint. She's not aware of any of this. So what happens is, over time, she becomes more and more more and more sexual in her behavior. Before you know it, she's in nightclubs most of the time, getting drunk. She's being gangbanged by a lot of guys in the streets, and she actually is like this. She's called the semen toilet of the community. Why semen toilet? Because the men often want to, even many grown men want to go around her to fill her vagina with their semen and all of that, do all type of weird things with her just to talk about it. She becomes the joke and the clown of the community. And once it has happened, the community got its ease. That means there's less domestic violence in the community. Marriages stay intact because the wives that claim husband got his anger out. Now we can continue again. So the community is at ease. But the only thing that was sacrificed is the sexual well-being of this teenage girl over there who's now a grown woman with issues. And now, as a grown woman with issues, she either ends up homeless or as a drug addict, or she ends up with men who punish her for a sexual past and she ends up being killed. Or she ends up having children as a single mom, her children bullied at school because her mom used to be a hoe or whatever. So that's how it often goes in the West. It's horrible, but it happens. This Lolita spell is an ancient Egyptian practice societies worldwide hold on to, but they do it in a covert way. They pretend to be innocent. Nobody wants to do it like ancient Egypt in the open because that's way too into people's face. Especially now that real Christianity, the biblical revelation, influenced cultures. Nobody wants to go back to the ancient Egyptian, into your face goddess thing. But it still happens out there. Now, I know that stack there is quite a lot. So normally I allow you to ask questions at the end of the live stream. But right now, I give you the time now to ask questions right away. All right? So are there questions about this topic, based on all that I told you till now? Let me know in the live chat. I'm giving you the chance to ask questions now. There's a little bit I still need to teach you, a little bit more, but that's going to be afterwards. Ask the questions now if you have any. I'll give you let me say I give you just 3 minutes. I just wait 3 minutes to get some questions and I'll continue. Dion, I don't understand your question because how it relates to this directly. I was talking about this Lolita spell. Let's talk about the wedlock and things like that. Any questions? I'll just wait 2 more minutes and then I'll continue with the last part of the live stream. And Diane, remember, it's a difference in marriage and wedlock. All right? Okay. 1.5 minutes more, then I'll continue with the last part of the live stream. I zoomed out, you can see all the notes I've made. All right. And by the way, I did my best to keep this live stream civilized, so I didn't use many harsh sexual terms here, because I may upset some of you. But no matter how much civilized I keep it, it's still a disturbing topic. Simple as that. Okay, so this Lolita spell over here, why does it work that much? Why does it work so easily? It doesn't work easily everywhere. Let me tell you that. You can go to, let's say, West Africa. Try this Lolita spell in West Africa. It's a big chance you won't survive because the women will turn on you and devour you. Try this Lolita spell in the state of Louisiana in the United States, or try it in the Caribbean, in the black communities in the Caribbean, or try it amongst the Afro-Latinos or Hispanic women in general. Big chance you get a slap around and the men will turn on you too. Why? Because those communities are a bit more sexually literate. Again, in the West, this Lolita spell is quite easy to do. It's not even a challenge to do because the majority of the women are sexually illiterate. They think they know all about sex because they're watching, I don't know, some soap operas, or because listening to feminists or whatever. They know nothing, really. So the Lolita spell doesn't work the same everywhere. There are places, there are some communities where it's impossible to do a Lolita spell because women are well maintained and well, how to say, taken care of their community. When the women in the community are well taken care of, it's almost impossible to do this Lolita spell over there. So, if you see this Lolita spell being done frequently in the community, that means that the women in that community are neglected. As simple as that. I know it's not a fun thing to hear, but it is what it is. So what do we do about this? First of all, we need real sexual education, not the liberal crap you were taught in high school because there's no education at all. It's brainwashing. We need real sexual education in a Christ-centered way. We need to have real femininity being promoted. We need to have actual effective sexual motivation, whether it's soft motivation or explicit motivation. I already made a live stream about it also. And one thing we also need to do is to demotivate sexual escapism amongst men. Because in the West now, sexual escapisms are kind of promoted and celebrated amongst men. Not by all men, but in general. We need to tune down on this because the Lolita spell can only work if there are enough men in community that want to escape sexually. If the men in the community have no interest in escaping sexually, you can't do the Lolita spell on any girl because it won't work. Because you won't get any customers, nor any men who are interested to pounce on the victim, into the victim, I would say. You wouldn't have that. So it's not a man's problem or a women's problem. It's a fallen mankind issue that we need to deal with. All right. Let me see if I missed any question. I'll do a long video one time about you have more power than you think. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, look. This Lolita spell is a way to get loose pussy. Because loose booty, that means when you actually use a male victim as a sexual sponge, that's not sustainable because the asshole is not built to take all that pounding of all those dicks. It's not. The vagina is built to get sexual pounding from a penis, so it's more durable on a scientific level to use a female victim for the sexual release in the community. So you have the loose booty, which in ancient Egypt was done to punish men who had pretty women that community thought were not entitled to, or men were not masculine enough, they were punished that way also. In ancient Greece, the loose booty became institutionalized and was used upon just to make sure the men wouldn't become too good because the older men would get offended. So in ancient Greece, you were afraid to become too good, better than the older men, else the older men would gang rape you and hang you on a tree. That's where we get the crucifixion from. The crucifixion is right from this practice, just so you know. So this type of sexual violence has been common in our human history, and it's still going on today, but it's now done in a hidden, dormant way. Now, what to do if you were a woman that had this spell done onto you? Listen, you can be renovated as a woman and still be beneficial to your community. Just because this was done onto you, that does not mean that it's over for you, you're finished. You can still eventually find a man to marry. You can still eventually be a part of your community and be a beneficial woman. It just has to be in a bit more different way because your natural bonding sexually will not work that well anymore. If this spell was done onto you as a woman, please forgive those men and forgive the community who allowed it to happen so that you can heal and move forward. All right? Just realize that it wasn't just the warlocks who did it to you. It wasn't just the men who were pounding into you. It is the community who was in on it. This is what I want you to realize. The community was in on it. All right? Okay. Yes, English not my native language, absolutely not. So, what else do we have to say about this topic? Look, as a male watching this, please don't even consider this spell because there's side effects you have to deal with too. Now, this spell can be done just for individual gain. You just want to have your way with a woman easily, but also can be done collectively just to make sure there's a semen toilet throughout the community. In any case, this spell has also as a backfire on those using it. And this is how you get a lot of gold diggers who end up exploiting and abusing men all over the place. So nobody benefits from this spell. Nobody really. Oh, and by the way, this whoring out your teenage daughters is something that happens in many cults too, till this day. I won't mention the names of cults, but some of you know which cults I'm talking about. So some of those wealthy businessmen, sometimes even politicians, now you know what they're doing. I say no names, so you can't sue me for anything. All right? All right. Let's see. Okay. I think we went through all of it. Are there any questions about this whole situation over here? Again, I did my best to keep this live stream as simple as possible. Let me know now in the live chat, please. Because after this live stream, I need to call with some believers. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, let me go back to see the questions over here. Let me know. Yes, we can cover a teenage niece from the spell. Command peace and safety surround your nieces. Command the earth to swallow up every male that tends to harm your nieces or your daughters sexually. Command the earth in Christ's mighty name to swallow up every man that wants to sexually harm or exploit your daughters or nieces. Do this in Christ's mighty name. All right? Okay. Any other questions, please? And by the way, if you're a woman, you have tattoos and you wear red lipstick, and they don't condemn you or anything like that, okay? You can be a believer, serve the Lord and all of that. Just beware with your behavior. That's all. That you don't give off the wrong idea to other people. Oh, and by the way, if you suspect a girl around you is under the spell, just pray for her. Just do that. You prevent a lot of harm in the community. Because this girl who's on this Lolita spell, she will turn into a problematic woman later on that will hurt a lot of good men. A lot of good quality men will be hurt by her too. And those good quality men, because they're hurt by her, it will also be a loss for the community. So it's not just about her. If you notice a girl is under this spell, please pray for her, intercede for her, please. Please do that. If you see a grown woman that's recovering from the spell, as far as you can, assist her to get therapy and to get the help she needs. We're in this together as a human species, so we have to actually collaborate together to solve this together. We can't just pray to Jesus and we don't participate in the solution. We need to participate in the solution. And this live stream is me participating in the solution by informing you about all of this and what we can do about it. All right. Okay. Well, I don't get many questions. Okay, so I'm about to close down the live stream. Thank you all for being here and watch this live stream. Oh, and by the way, there is a song from Cabo Verde called Lolita. It's a song with a nice melody. The song is an actual warning against this spell, why you shouldn't do this spell, but a lot of people don't catch to that. And of course, also a fashion style called Lolita also. There's some women with Lolita as a first name, so not everywhere you see the term Lolita, it automatically is about this goddess misfortune. Okay? But just understand, the term Lolita is a sexualized derogatory term used by warlocks for any woman they've managed to put under this goddess misfortune. So if you are a pagan watching this, I don't think that you're involved in such things, so please stay away from these things. And by the way, go away from paganism and serve Christ, please. And to all the other people watching this, serve Christ, He is Lord. You don't need all this sexual relief. Just serve the Heavenly Father and you'll be sexually fulfilled all the time. Okay? Serve Him. He is Lord. He is the head and owner of human sexuality. Lord means sex owners. The Heavenly Father is our sex owner. So serve Him. That's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ. Be at peace. And I will see you next time. Be